Hello, and welcome to MYBcast, a podcast and video series devoted to exploring alternatives for self care through somatic touch therapies of all sorts. We are fascinated with the mind body connection, and so are the people we talk with. Today, we're continuing our series, Portraits of the Pioneers. Portraits offers an in depth look at those who have been actively involved in the exploration, development, and practice of somatic touch therapies since their early inception. I'm Anna Marie Bowers, and I'm here with my co host, Richard Mack, and our guest, Linda Garofallou. Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Anne Marie, and welcome back, Linda. I want to just share with our audience that in between these episodes, we had a little conversation about some of your teachers that I'd like to bring into this episode too. T. Barry Brazelton, the MD, whose vision of every child experience of love, joy, and wonder. Every child is all our children. That just struck my heart as such a powerful, powerful statement and a reality to the new world that we really are creating right now. So I'd like to start this episode by giving you the floor to share a little bit about that experience with him.
Once again, I've been so blessed with the mentors that I've been pleased to learn at their side. And one of the first was my very dear colleague and mentor, Gerry Costa, who started the early childhood mental health. At first, he started an early childhood mental health institute in East Orange, New Jersey, and I worked under his mentorship there and ran my infant massage grant programs for both the foster parent groups who gave homes to the drug exposed babies, and my work with the mothers and babies in the residential drug rehab center. Gerry introduced me to T. Barry Brazelton because there were a group of us at the Institute that were trained in T. Barry Brazelton's touch points. And I think many parents have his books, his touch points books on their shelves. And he had this wonderful concept. He was the one in the early 1970s when parents not only were not allowed to touch their children in the hospital, they weren't allowed to visit their children in the hospital. And T. Barry Brazelton turned all of that upside down and said, parents need to be at children's sides, and allowed parents to start to visit. Before that, they were not allowed into the hospital, if you can understand. One of the most stressful period in a child's life. T. Barry Brazelton traveled the world learning from indigenous cultures. He brought so much to learning. He was a joy, an absolute joy, and every child in the world was his child. And he really lived it and breathed it. And I had the delight of the group of us that went from the Institute to Boston to take the Touchpoints training. Part of that at the time was we were invited to his Dr. Brazelton's home for a cocktail party. And he took us downstairs, which is where he had his pediatrician office, where he saw children all of those years and had stories of his travels. And it was an absolute delight to hear the love in his heart and the deep respect for a parent's capacity to be the best parent that they possibly could if they were given the right environment and the right tools. We all come into the world with that capacity. And neuroscience is now showing we are hardwired at birth for all of that to happen. We'll go into the neuroscience of that because I think it's very important, a very important piece understanding. So
Please.
bring me back to that at some point if we don't, but for now. So that was really a foundational piece, an understanding from this deep compassion and empathy for children and parents, and how can we support them? My prayer in this world and our world right now, which seems like we veered quite the opposite from that somehow we unwind through all of this chaos and all of this quite opposite thinking, that what will come back is that we will understand. And everything in science, everything in neuroscience, everything through body-mind connections, all of the sciences, Eastern and Western medicine, are combining to tell us just how vital it is. What happens at birth, what happens in those first hours after birth. There's a fascinating piece of research now. Do you know Niles Bergman? He
No.
was like the grandfather of kangaroo care. So if you're familiar with kangaroo care, it's from the moment of birth, there's that quiet hour, they call it the miracle hour, where a baby is put skin to skin on the mother's chest. That's all you have to do. The highly conserved neural behaviors are in the physiology. The baby will start to crawl toward the mother's breast, will seek out the mother's breast for milk. The eye contact that happens, there's the whole physiology that happens, and that baby is born. There are 7 different neural networks, what they call resting state regulatory networks in the brain. Adults have 7. Babies come into the world with 5 of those, fully wired, fully ready to go. All the other systems in a baby's body at birth are very immature. And we talk about that. There's 9 months in utero, and then we have a 9-month gestation ex utero or outside. But it's that time when the baby is expectant to be close to the mother and with that kangaroo care. So he's done all of that work about just the neurobiology of what happens. And it's fascinating. I wish we had time to go into that. But the fascinating research he's doing now, and they've done fMRIs to watch what happens. And he talks about this 0 separation at birth and how profoundly powerful it is, because it sets the reward circuits in the brain. There are 8, 9, or 10 circuits that get wired in a mother's brain in the first 1,000 minutes after birth. And it happens through that skin-to-skin contact with the baby. It takes that 1,000 minutes for the mother. And for the father, it takes 30 minutes skin-to-skin for him to wire up his, what they call the carrying circuit in his brain. But it all happens through the innate, inborn physiology that's in the body. We come prepared to be connected. It is our safe place. And all of that gets wired up in that very positive way that sets a nervous system, that attunes it to being in safety. And it attunes it for a lifelong process. If that process gets disrupted at birth, we have a very neoplastic brain. We can go back. The beauty of it is we can go back and do all kinds of reparative work. But those dysregulations that happen when that expected neurobiology isn't happening, then we get those dysregulations in sensory input. But we get dysregulations in the nervous system that sets it to a hyper-arouse that gets very easily triggered. It easily triggers all of the neurohormones of cortisol and adrenaline, and it keeps us in that hyperactive state. And once we're there, it takes us longer to wash those chemicals out once we can get back to baseline. The power of touch is it has the power to go back to those foundational areas of touch in the foundational basis of the brain and rewire. And like Bruce Perry says, re-etch new, more regulated circuits for both mother and parent. So that was the segue from T. Berry. And then I think, Richard, you had read that beautiful piece about my other mentor, who's a current mentor, Dr. Stuart Shanker. If you
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that. I was very, very fascinated. And this is a wonderful bridge from infants to actual children, which I know you're doing a lot of work with right now. So please talk a little bit about Stuart Shanker.
do you want to read that piece that you had read to me before?
Sure.
That was
So
great.
what you shared with me and what my research showed is that he has 5 domains of stress. The first is to recognize the stressors. Second, reduce the stressors. 3, reflect, enhance, and stress awareness towards those stressors. Restore the energy, number 4. And number 5 is the reframing.
Yes. Where do I start with Stuart? He is so brilliant and such important work. He is doing literally the foundational work of what is necessary to build the civil society that we all have in our hearts that we hope will come, where all of those dreams of every child and parent and every family and every person has the environment, the supportive environment to be the best person that we can be. He began as an Oxford philosopher. From there, he did research work with bonobos, some really fascinating work. He did all of the original research in the early childhood mental health field with Stanley Greenspan. And I see you shaking your head, Anna Marie, you know his name, who's done a lot of work for children with autism and neurodevelopmental, is the Floor Time program, which is this wonderfully relational-based program for children with neurodevelopmental difficulties. And Stuart developed, so what you read were he calls them the 5 domains of child development. And he has the 5 steps of self-regulation. And from this perspective, the ability to self-regulate is foundational to all future growth. Everything comes from that foundation. And the reason why he came to lecture at one of our lectures at Montclair State. This was 15 years ago, I think. And he started talking about this. And I realized, because the work I do now, so I segued from the infant massage work at the hospital, and I segued from there to join my mentor, Gerry Costa, when he started the Center for Autism and Early Childhood Mental Health at Montclair State University. So I went with my grant for infant massage, and but since the focus of there were 2 focuses, the early childhood mental health and autism, and I'd had some experience with children with autism at the hospital, but I understood that as powerful as the infant massage protocol was, that it wasn't addressing specifically. So I started searching out a protocol specifically, and I took trainings in a couple of them, and they were, for all intents and purposes, I thought, good programs, but still based on massage techniques. And then I found my mentor, who was Louisa Silva, who was a pediatrician, an MD pediatrician trained at UCLA, and happened to have a dual training. She was also a doctor of Chinese medicine. I'm going to put that on the sideline because I want to go back to Stuart. But since that time and finding that protocol, I have focused all of my attention to the Qigong sensory treatment protocol, because I found it so profoundly understanding of the underlying causes of those neurodevelopmental difficulties in a way that nothing else addressed. Most of them started addressing at behaviors and verbal and cognitive. And this is the first thing that really got to what I thought were those underlying regulatory issues. So to bring it back to Stuart, the first time I heard him lecture at our university, I just sat in amazement because he was talking about the fundamentals of what underpinned the sensory treatment work I was doing. And so his whole protocol, he originally developed for doctors to teach in well baby visits. He understood that that wasn't going to happen. There wasn't enough time. And he really pivoted and he moved his program into the schools, the school system, and teaching teachers the concepts of self-regulation with his classic reframing of misbehavior is a child's misbehavior is not misbehavior, it's stress behavior. And if you can, just through his steps, his 5 steps of self-regulation, if you can go through those first to look at those steps, which is to recognize this is not a misbehavior, this is a stress behavior, to reframe it as a stress behavior, then to look at step back and say, why? Why am I seeing this and why now? And just that pause, that moment to step back and pause is so powerful for the nervous system of the teacher, the parent, the caregiver who's in that situation, and also for the child. There's that moment to go, I'm not seeing you as a bad person. I'm seeing you as a child in need of help with the stress that is overwhelming you right now.
Okay.
And then to step back and ask, how can I help you do that? So each of those 5 steps take teachers and parents and caregivers and clinicians who are working with parents and children a roadmap for how to, first of all, find your own calm in an overwhelmingly stressful situation. Because it's only through us finding our own calm that we can help then to co-regulate that person we're with, whether it's our partner, a parent we're working with, a colleague we're working with, somebody on the street that's in need of help. And it gets back to the premise that it's social connection that downregulates the nervous system and helps us to get to that point. It is a beautiful system, and I've been able to be witness to the evolution that Stuart has taken that through. I've taken all of his courses and the evolution of the understanding and the way he brings in the most recent neuroscience. I'm currently just literally finishing the last module of the neuroscience of the primitive emotional circuits in the brain, which is one of the most powerful and one of the most integrative pieces of learning that I've had from Stuart. He is a philosopher, he is a psychologist, he is a researcher, he is a wonderful storyteller. He can bring in stories from every realm of literature, of every piece of evolutionary psychology, and really make it accessible for anyone, of how we help each other to find that still, quiet place where all social connection and all higher order capacities come from.
Oh my
So
God.
I'm going to just interrupt for 1 second and ask, Linda, can you just iterate briefly how other people could find information about this? If they want to read about this, if they are interested in courses or something like that. they're listening to this and going, oh my gosh, what was that person's name? Rewind.
Yes. Well, I can, if, again, do you have a place to put some links
Yes.
under
At the end of each video, we do put the links, and on the podcast, we will probably have to have them as spoken, of course, because there won't be a video slide. So in the podcast, there would be a potential to speak the name of a website or a link or something like that.
Well, Stuart Shanker is at the Merit Center, MEHRIT. And I believe, and I'm sorry, I should have it at my fingertips.
No, that's totally fine. Just Merit Center would give someone something to start
and
looking.
it's in Canada. They're at Trent University. It is some of the most important work that's happening, and on so many levels,
Mm. And I dare say that this goes far beyond children. We,
Yes.
as human beings in general, are going through an enormous stressor of just living in the 21st century and what we're going through as we transition into a higher form of being. And I think it's worth to mention these things again. And I'm going to simply say the 5 domains of stress. Recognize the stressors, number 1. Number 2, reduce the stress. Number 3, reflect and enhance the stress awareness. I think that's really, really important for those of us that are locked into the news network and the news cycle and the social media cycle. You're killing yourself. Number 4, restore the energy. And of course, number 5 is the reframing and moving forward. That's awesome. And that's going to be worth another session. Maybe we can get Stuart on the show. Anna Marie, we have to look into that.
Sure, that would be great.
It would be, yes, he is wonderful, really. And such important work, really, truly paradigm changing and groundbreaking work. And it is, I think, we think about children, and we're looking now at the processes as it applies to child development. But what it sets is lifelong patterns for adults.
Mhm.
So if we get to the point for that same adult who's experiencing the same dysregulations, we have the capacity through that neuroplasticity to go back to that underlying area. And that's where all the work that you're doing, that is the beauty of somatic touch therapy, it is a communication between two people where that connection, where that reparative work can happen. And the touch therapies done and the way you do it embodies that sense, and which downregulates the nervous system and gives us all the capacity to get back to finding our own self-regulation.
Absolutely. And this is not going to come in any form of a pill. This is not going to come. This is only going to happen when the person is ready to do the work of self-healing. Regulate. They have to re-regulate themselves. There's been so many traumas and unresolved trauma loops that they are going through that this is not the life that you were designed to live as a human being. And I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, and people are bringing those, we're talking about birth traumas, we're talking about childhood traumas, we're talking about all of those things. And then whatever we have, each of us brought what we have to the pandemic where the entire system broke down. And I believe since the pandemic, we have been living under 24/7 stress. There is no relief other than what we now must consciously find our way to do that. It's a slow, step-by-step process. And you just take a little step each day, and then we regret. It's like Dr. Brazelton's wonderful touch points is, and I find it's for children, but I think we go through this our entire lives. We have developmental, so we grow, and we reach these plateaus, these developmental plateaus where we've made a milestone, we know how to walk now. And then we start to grow again. But as we start to grow, before we get to the next milestone, we fall apart. Kids go, I thought he learned how to walk. But we fall apart. We disorganize in a certain way that helps us reorganize at a higher developmental level with new capacities. But I think it's just that process of we grow, we have to fall apart and reorganize, and we grow some more, and it's a step-by-step process. And I think we have to have a deep respect and appreciation. And my other dear colleague at Dr. Stewart's is his, Susan Hopkins is his right-hand person, and they do these beautiful webinars together, and really it's a beautiful model of connection, learning and through connection. And she has this beautiful term of using soft eyes, that when things get tough, we first and foremost have to take the pause. We have to breathe. Ask why and why now, what's happening, and look through very soft eyes at ourselves and those that we're trying to help. This is a hard process. This is hard work. This is hard work.
And it's not something that we're trained to do from birth on. It's not something we would even understand on a mental capacity level as a child. As a child, you're just going through this pattern, this neurological pattern. You're going through this developmental pattern. Once we have language and labels and names for things, and we're using, prefrontal cortex, it's a whole different process. And so it becomes frightening because no one told us this was going to happen. No one really explained that this is a cycle, that this is the way things go. And this is a good thing because it allows you to pause and say, oh, I remember, or I'd like to do this instead, or this is stuck, or, any of those responses. And so, to me, this is what somatic touch therapy helps with adults, is
Absolutely.
remember, this is a pattern you've been through before. Your body has been through this before. Your mind, your feeling, you've been through this before, and you came out the other side. And here's maybe some language to put around it now so that you're not so afraid when this happens again. So I don't know, does that relate to anything that you've experienced with adults?
I think it absolutely, because working with because I work with both. I work with
Yes.
I work with parent and child, and I only do hands-on work now as a way of teaching and modeling the attuned touch kind of protocol for the parent to do. And again, like we spoke about in the first podcast, in that we have to give the parent an experience of what this feels like, then I will do hands-on for that. But my hands-on at this point is just in that capacity to be that co-regulating partner, to help say, this is what it can feel like when you find this place. This is what you have the capacity to do. We all innately have these capacities. The cultures we live in put all of these roadblocks. And once we've hit the social media, all of these maladaptive ways of regulating that just keep us locked in stress cycles. And so needing to find those ways to break those patterns and get back to restoring with truly regulatory practices that can help do that. And it's all back to social connection. We are born with the need for social connection to downregulate a hyperactive nervous system. And there are no pills, that's it. And if we can find the way to then find the rhythm and the repetition to etch new, calmer capacities to stay in that place. And we're always going to get triggered, but little by little, we get triggered less And we'll segue into talking about the Qigong sensory protocol, because it is so powerful to do that. But I talk to parents originally that kids come in and their nervous systems are tipped constantly. They don't ever get out of survival mode. They are constantly in parasympathetic, fight, flight. All of those survival mechanisms are blazing and driving their behaviors. And little by little, what we try to do is we tip them back to little by little to calm and relax. They don't stay there very long in the beginning. They fall back. But each time we take them, they stay a little longer. They stay a little longer. Then we tip them over into calm and relax, and they start to learn. So it's not just that we're co-regulating. We are co-regulating with the intention that we are transferring those skills. We are building and strengthening the capacities through that repetition and that reminder in the physiology and the physical body, the body-mind connection, that yes, you know how to be there, you know how to stay there, and we're etching new pathways for that to happen.
That business of empowering another human adult to be able to self-regulate is a little bit different than working directly with the adult to give them an experience. So that I'm a little curious about that piece, what your experience is, or words of wisdom, for lack of a better cliche, about helping empower each other as adults to find that place where we can remember, oh yeah, I can regulate. This is what I need to do. Because I think that's equally powerful in many ways, to actually giving the experience of, you forgot, this is how it feels, you know, to empower someone to say, you can remember. That's another deeper kind of step.
It is the deeper step. And because otherwise we just have people kind of
Yes.
getting stuck thinking and we live in a culture that so disenfranchises us, that all of our answers come from the outside. All of our answers come from a pill or, this or that. And it just leads us down these pathways to always put our power outside. And so I think the two you're talking about are part and parcel of the same thing, because we have to do the co-regulating, and we have to, the client, your clients come on a weekly basis because there is an important piece of the regularity, the repetition. That is how we build new and stronger inner capacities. So I think part of it is helping them to understand that that's our intention. My Louisa, Dr. Silva, one of the most powerful lessons she had is intention is 90% of the treatment. 10% is what you're doing with your hands, and that's really important because that's the tool that you have, but it's your intention. So that they know through your words, but they know through who you are and through your presence and how you are holding them in the room. That our intention is, you have this capacity. I'm here to help you experience what that feels like. And over time, you'll find your way to doing this yourself. Step by step. There's a beautiful Italian word I'm not going to even murder, but it's this beautiful word that encapsulates. It's actually a Spanish word that encapsulates that process of, it's a slow step-by-step process. Do you know Annette Banial and the work she does, the regulation work? She was a student of Feldenkrais, and she has a whole program for children with autism and neurodevelopmental problems similar. And she talks about the key is slow. I quote her in my book because it's so important. If we just keep going at the pace we're going, we get stuck in that. That's a repetition we get stuck in, and we don't go anywhere. When we slow down, it gives the brain the capacity to change. So we slow everything down.
Mm.
And that's where that change comes from.
And that is a beautiful place to take a pause because we're going to come back for episode 3 and we're going to be talking about that and the work that you're doing now. Linda, thank you so much. I mean, I'm getting so much from this. It's beautiful, beautiful. And
Thank you very much.
and Anna Marie, why don't you take us out of this episode? And I look forward to the next one.
Sounds good. Stay tuned. We'll be back.